campaign of presidential candidate this time, Donald Trump, brought the issue of anti-Islam. And surprisingly, brothers and sisters, this campaign has a big support of public. Dr. Zakir Naik. So, what do you think behind this phenomenon? What does it indicate?
No, I believe that we find that anything which is popular, they do have enemies.
Yeah.
And Allah says in the Quran that every prophet had an enemy. And Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, being the last prophet, will always have an enemy. So I feel that people like Donald Trump, they prove the Quran right. Allah says in Surah Furqan chapter number 25 that there will be an enemy for Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And since Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his message is going to be till eternity, there are bound to be critics and enemies of Islam and of Prophet Muhammad. So these people are proving the Quran right, because in spite of all these things, Islam is spreading. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Imran chapter 3 verse 54, Allah says, Makaru makarallah wallahu khairul makirin. They plan and plotted, Allah too plan. Allah is the best of planner. If you see after 9/11, the media war on Islam and throughout the world, normally people should think that now Islam should perish, na'uzubillah. They cannot. But we find that more people want to know what kind of religion is this. And we find that in USA alone, in a span of about 9 months, after 9/11, 34,000 Americans accepted Islam. In Europe alone, in a span of 10 months after 9/11, more than 20,000 Europeans accepted Islam. So more they are trying to attack Islam, more Islam is spreading. I believe that such type of people, in the long run, it is benefit for Islam. People want to know what is this religion. And whenever people attack Islam, and you find that in the long run, it benefits Islam.
All right. That's fantastic. Now, Dr. Zakir, do you agree if I say that now Muslims are caught up with efforts to restore the image due to Islamophobia campaign in the West? So because of this, they forget to promote noble values of Islam.
Yes, I do agree with you.
Yeah.
Many a time we Muslims being emotional, we fall into the trap. For example, we know what happened in the Danish cartoons.
Yeah, Danish.
It is wrong what they did. We found that most of the Muslim organization, they left everything what they were doing and they were concentrating on that. They were protesting. Fine, we should protest. But that doesn't mean that we stop our activity. So if an organization was suppose doing 100 points work, they focus all their attention on replying to the Danish cartoon, and out of 100, they only do 5 points work. So imagine if all the organization do that, it will be a loss for the Muslim Ummah. What we require, there should be specialized organization to take care of this. And I've given a talk on this, how this should be dealt. What we do, we become emotional. Fine, we disagree with it. But don't become so emotional that whatever positive work you are doing, you also stop that. So if he is attacking Islam, we don't leave everything. You leave everything and you only go and reply to that. I mean, for example, as I told you earlier, that anyone, they're bound to be criticism on him. I mean, for example, if you go on the Google and if you type my name, there'll be about approximately 15 million websites which has my information. I would say approximately 15 to 20% would be against me. So when a person gets popular, there are bound to be enemies. Initially, I had a perception that when anyone gets popular, the percentage of enemy remains the same. For example, if there are 100 followers, then 1 is the enemy. If you have 1,000 followers, then 10 is the enemy. If you have 1,000,000 followers, then there will be 10,000 enemies. The 1% remains the same, or 2%, or 10%, or the percentage, it remains the same. But later on, I realized that it's not like that. If you see the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he started preaching Islam, initially he had 5 followers, no enemies. It became 50, 100, no enemies. When it started increasing, then the enemies started appearing. Today, the most popular human being in the world is Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Even according to Michael H. Hart, even according to non-Muslims, the most influential human being in the world is Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Today, if we know that there are about 1.8 billion Muslims, and maybe another 100 more million, maybe non-Muslims who may be like Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you can say 2 billion Muslims who may be like Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But those who are against Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will be more than 2 billion.
Yeah.
So because of the popularity, then the percentage of enemies keep on increasing.
Yeah. There's a question I read in our Facebook followers. They ask, how do you manage your emotion and your wisdom and your spiritual when there is some people hate you, say something bad about you? How do you manage it?
See, one thing, a Dai should always be calm. He cannot get emotionally carried away.
Yeah.
If somebody criticizes me or abuses me, if I retaliate emotionally, then I will not be following the Quran. Quran says in Surah Nahl chapter 16 verse 125, Udu ila sabili rabbika bil-hikmah wal-mau'izati al-hasana wajadil billati hiya ahsan. Invite all to the way of thy Lord with wisdom and with preaching, and argue with them and reason with them in the ways that are best most gracious. Allah also says in the Quran in Surah Fussilat chapter number 41 verse number 34 that it says that repel evil with good, and you will find that the person who hates you, he becomes your friend.
Yeah.
So repel the evil with good. So whenever anyone criticizes me, normally first, when there were very few criticism, we used to reply. Now, on the net, there will be about 2 to 3 million criticism.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to reply to 2 to 3 million criticism, I will not be able to go forward. I will spend the next 10 years replying. What I do, there are other people replying. They should do it.
Yeah.
No problem. What I tell my staff and my friends, that when anyone criticizes me, check if there is something in it for me to learn. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
I can make a mistake. So if there is something where I have really made a mistake, and if it is a positive criticism, I should change. I don't say I'm infallible. I'm a human being. So first I look in that criticism, is there something which is substance and something which is for me to improve? Almost all the criticism, or more than 95%, they are more of allegations, quoting out of context, and nothing. But yet, if there is something for me to improve, then I utilize that. Because there's a saying that if someone throws bricks at you, use that brick to make your house.
Yeah, correct.
If someone throws a stone at you, raise yourself so high, the stone does not reach you. So therefore, I believe it is waste of time to answer to all these things. If there is something really which is worth answering, maybe less than 1%, then it's worth answering. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Mr. Zakir, one more question from our follower. They want me to ask you about Malaysia. They say that Malaysia has worked hard to promote that Islam is a religion that promotes peace and moderation. So in your opinion, what is the impact that can be seen from this effort in Malaysia, from your point of view?
As far as Malaysia as a Muslim country is concerned, I always looked up to Malaysia. Compared to the other Muslim countries, a multiracial country where Muslims are majority, but not in absolute majority. Yes, maybe 55 to 60%. You have Hindus, you have Christians, you have Chinese, you have Buddhists. And it is an advanced country. So as far as Malaysia is concerned, in compared to other countries, I feel it is one of the few Muslim countries that had the guts to challenge the Western world. Otherwise, most of the Muslim countries, they don't have that guts.
Yeah.
So I feel that we should be proud of our religion, proud of our culture, and we should not be apologetic. And that's what I find in Malaysia. Alhamdulillah. They're proud to be.
And at the same time, in Malaysia, there is a claim that comparative religion is not suitable in Malaysia. is not relevant, irrelevant, because Malaysia is a multiracial country. So we will find answer after this. We take a break for a while. Stay tuned. It's Perception.
The tweets. President-elect Donald Trump calling for punishment for flag burners, stripping them of U.S. citizenship, jail time. Of course it's unconstitutional, but it's about what Trump wants. It's unconstitutional to punish someone for burning the flag. It is constitutional to burn the flag. Of course, we don't like it, but free speech is often about protecting what you don't like, or at least it was. Let's discuss what the implications are from what we see the president-elect wanting to do in this area with CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Jeffrey Toobin and CNN media analyst and author of The War for Late Night, Bill Carter. First the law, then the ethics of the situation. The law, clear when it comes to flag burning, just because we don't like it. 69, 89, it's been ratified many times in the Supreme Court. But it goes to the window of what Trump sees the First Amendment as in terms of what to protect and not to protect. How so?
Well, I mean, you know, if you went to a Donald Trump rally, one of the highlights was always when he would point to the media and say, they're scum, they're dishonest, they're horrible. And the way I interpret that is he thinks the media is scum and dishonest and horrible. I mean, I think there is genuine distaste. Now, the question is that just his opinion, which of course he is free to have, or will that have implications in how the law is administered in this country?
Right.
I don't think we know the answer to that at this point. Certainly in terms of press access, he does appear to be heading towards cutting back on press pools and you know, sort of the White House operation.
Hasn't given a press conference since he's won.
That's right.
Doesn't do news interviews with any regularity.
But that is certainly within his rights as president, and you know, he's riding a height of popularity now, as all presidents are when they, you know, when they win. The question is, when he gets in the White House, and every White House is embattled to a certain extent, how he will react. Will he reach out and try to get in front of the public more, or will he close the doors even further?
Right, so that's what we're trying to figure out. In any one tweet, you know, his supporters say that we take this stuff way too literally,
right,
and that there's all this hue and cry about one flag-burning tweet that's apropos of very little, and we all, you know, gallop off to freak out about it. But if you look at the sum total of what he has said.
This is a consistent message.
And it's worrisome.
It is.
And let me just remind people what he said about libel laws during the campaign when he didn't like some of the coverage of him. Here's what he threatened. Listen to this.
One of the things I'm going to do if I win, and I hope I do, and we're certainly leading, is I'm going to open up our libel laws so when they write purposely negative and horrible and false articles, we can sue them and win lots of money.
Okay, so hard to know now what he will do in the White House, but that was certainly a shot across the bow.
Right, and a lot of this is about completely getting rid of dissent. He doesn't want dissent. He doesn't react very well to dissent, and a lot of the tweets that he sends out are in instant reaction to some criticism about him. And that's really what this broad purpose is. He doesn't like people setting fire to the flag because they were protesting him. He doesn't mind if someone stands up and says Sig Heil enough to complain about that. That's equally protected speech, but equally despicable. And he isn't going after that because it's not criticizing him. I think it's basically his nature to be thin-skinned, and he reacts. And frankly, the president, when he's the president, everything he says has impact. You can't tweet out something as a president and say, I'm just kidding around about it, or it's just, I'm just making
words matter.
His words
ignorance also works against him also, because as an insurgent, as a private citizen, you can attack the laws as the other, as the system. Now he's going to be the steward of it. So not only is it wrong to say, I'm going to redo the libel laws, because obviously the president doesn't do that, or can he have Kellyanne Conway threaten to sue his critics? Remember when she did that? Hey, be careful what you say.
Right.
You know, because they don't understand. The president of the United States has open and unlimited access for critics. You can come at him all day and not be sued for defamation. So he doesn't understand the law, and he doesn't understand that he's a steward of how you do things in America to keep it open and free. And that's the concern.
That is the concern, but I also think, he is tapping into feelings that a lot of people share in this country. That, the media is a juicy target for him because, we think of ourselves as stewards of the Constitution. We think of ourselves as the representatives of the public. A lot of the public doesn't see us that way. They see us as an insulated elite. That pursues our own interests as opposed to the public interest. And when he attacks the press and when he attacks the cast, he is tapping into feelings that a lot of people share.
Right, but it's Orwellian to think that, okay, so get rid of them, problems will be solved, right? And that if you just have a straight filter from the White House to the people, well, that's called, North Korea.
That's true, and I think we are a long way from North Korea at this point, and I will remain, and I think we're likely to remain that way. But the question I have is, his opinions are, he's perfectly entitled to his hostile opinions. The question is, once he becomes president, what can he do that will really impact on our work? And I don't know.
Nobody,
for example,
nobody knows that
statement about libel.
But luckily, he's very
limiting about libel laws, and he can't change the Constitution to make it, a crime.
But he can appoint judges. But he can appoint judges who are less interested. And one of the things that even this very polarized Supreme Court is pretty unified about is protections for the First Amendment. The Westboro Baptist Church, this horrible church that protested, at soldiers' funerals, their rights were protected in an 8-to-1 decision. I mean, it's really bipartisan First Amendment rule.
Well, one of the conservatives, they always talk about originalists, and they want to protect the Constitution, and this sounds like something that undermines the Constitution.
They also believe
remember,
government.
One of the big reasons for the First Amendment in this, and all of the discussion about it in the amendments, was dissent against government. Because they were worried about a tyrannical government and trying to seal opinion. The irony that we're hearing it from Trump today. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're following a lot of news this morning. There's some important weather information to get you. Let's get right to it.
The people he selected are solid, effective, capable people.
He's got a choice to make as to who he feels most comfortable with.
Washington Republicans plotting a war on seniors. Democrats will not let them win.
The president-elect touting a deal to save 1,000 manufacturing jobs in Indiana.
If he does it, kudos to him.
I will believe it when I see it.
Raising concerns, many people asking why he's assembling a team that seems critical of the very agencies they are tasked with overseeing, and there are other fears as well. So here to discuss this is comedian and contributor at the Daily Beast, Dean Obeidallah, and CNN political commentator Ben Ferguson. Let's just start with your article that you've written, Dean, about how what your big fear is that you see this as the most anti-Muslim administration ever.
I think
your evidence?
Objectively speaking, we've never had an administration that spewed this kind of open anti-Muslim rhetoric, starting at the top with Donald Trump, who said Islam hates us, to saying thousands of Muslims cheered on 9/11 in New Jersey. Even Giuliani said that wasn't true.
But he won. I mean, he said all that. We know that during the election.
He won.
But
and
now you
he's
still
building,
see people who are saying things still.
Oh, he's building a dream team of anti-Muslim hate there. You've got Michael Flynn, National Security Advisor, who said Islam is not a religion. I just watched the tape again last night. The idea that one of the Abrahamic faiths is not a religion, it's a political ideology, a faith practiced by thousands of Muslim Americans serving bravely in our military right now, is stunning and shocking. You've got Steve Bannon from Breitbart, who gave a platform on his radio show and Breitbart.com to the most anti-Muslim bigots out there. People who are the equivalent of the Klan to our community, from Pam Geller to Frank Gaffney, to demonize us, saying Muslims shouldn't be in the government. So it's a very concerning time. And then Ben Carson, the newest one, who said a Muslim should not be president because Islam is inconsistent with the Constitution. You have this, and my fear is they turn this into policy. And that in any event, it's ginning up fear. We have a spike in hate crimes in the last 2 months against Muslim Americans. Just 2 Muslims in New York, an MTA person and a police officer. So So that's my fear, that we go beyond this rhetoric and it does more than spike in hate crimes, turns into policy.
Ben, you laughed off this critique as Dean was giving it. Why?
It's a lot of fear-mongering going on here with no policies that have been implemented or even advocated for that would give us any indication that any of this terrible, terrifying news that he just said is going to become anything close to reality.
But
the
statements,
fact is
hold on, Ben. The statements don't bother you?
The statements that he's talking about, some of them have been taken out of context. When Flynn was talking about Islam, he's talking about radical Islam. He sees it through the perspective as being in charge, let me at least finish, with the military of actually dealing with real Islamic extremism. And I think what you have here is you have an all-star team that's been put together to fight radical Islam, extremists, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. If there's a dream team here, it's a dream team that many Americans said, look, for 8 years we tried the other idea. Let's go around the world and apologize. Let's close down Gitmo and then people, extremists, will somehow not hate us as much. Let's pull out of Iraq and Afghanistan and then somehow Muslim extremists will stop attacking us. It did not work for 8 years. You had the rise of ISIS that even Obama said this week, yes, it caught him off guard because they didn't want to deal with the reality. There are extremists out there. They are doing horrible, god-awful things around the world. And so, yes, you do have a dream team of people that hate radical Islam extremists, and they're going to do a great job of going after them, and that's what the American voters said they wanted.
Ben, there's no place to be an apologist for hate, and there's no place to laugh at people who are suffering hate
I'm not apologizing for hate.
You clearly are, because you're saying they're talking about radical Islam. Ben Carson didn't say radical Islam. He said a Muslim American should not be president because Islam is inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States. Michael Flynn, I watched this speech last night in the totality. He said Islam is not a religion, not radical. He said Islam is not a religion.
Let's look at Ben Carson. Let's deal with Ben Carson for a second. Ben Carson, if you look at Sharia law, it does not coexist. It cannot coexist with our Constitution.
He was talking about
if you look at what he was saying in context.
Yeah, then you can quantify that. I don't want Sharia law in America. I don't want Christian law in America either. I don't want the Bible or the Quran the basis of U.S. law. I hope you agree with that. The Bible shouldn't be the basis of U.S. law either. That's a different discussion. The reality is, Ben, people are suffering in this country. We had an off-duty New York police officer this week, the hate crime against her. The person was arrested, calling her a terrorist. An MTA officer, worker, pushed down the stairs, a woman wearing a hijab, by guys said, get out of this country.
And let's be clear, I condemn that the same way you do, but you also have not mentioned any of the crimes that have been committed in this country, whether it was a Draw Muhammad event, whether it was the Fort Hood multiple shootings there, whether it was other Muslim extremists that decided to do things out in San Bernardino, etc. You haven't mentioned those either, so it's on both sides.
Right, but we are talking about the cabinet. There's been over 800 hate incidences, not all hate crimes, documented by the Southern.
But Ben's making an interesting point that you need to hear, which is, he is countering what you're saying is being done to Muslims by saying what's being done to white people in this country. And that's part of the resolve of this election, which is white people feel that they're being victimized by Islam. And part of the justification, unless I'm getting you wrong, Ben, is now it's our turn.
Not just white people, everybody. I mean, you look at the people that have been shot and
nobody more than Muslims
with knives.
Nobody more than
Muslims. Muslims. But Muslims that have done this, they've attacked all people. They've attacked young, old, African American, white, Hispanic. They don't care who their targets are. So that's why this cabinet, to me, is not scary, or the voters that voted for Donald Trump.
One gets worse than the other. Steve Bannon shouldn't be there. We all know that. Ben, the number one victim of ISIS by far are Muslims. Over 95% of the victims of ISIS. We want ISIS defeated as much as everyone else does. Donald Trump's rhetoric saying Muslims are hiding terrorists in our midst. We see bombs in people's homes, which was not true. Again, a figment of his imagination.
Let's be clear.
So, Ben, let's be shoulder to shoulder
in the United States of America. The victims in the United States of America have not been 95% Muslim. And so I'll go back to the core point here. This is fear-mongering. This cabinet has not put together, and you cannot tell me one policy that you're terrified of. You're just saying you're terrified of these people because they won and you lost.
All right, but hold on. Let's also be clear. There are no policies, Ben.
They're not in office.
The administration's not in office yet, so that's a little clever. And Dean's point goes to you're going to design policy based on what you believe. And there's a lot of concern and fear about Islam and Islamophobia in some of these picks. But you're right, we'll have to see what they do. But it's not wrong to discuss the possibility of what they might do based on what they seem to believe. Ben, Dean, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's a lot of news going on right now. Let's get to it.
By the way, are you glad I ran for president? I think so. Right?
Trump will stay on as executive producer of The Celebrity Apprentice.
Donald Trump doesn't need this money. Why not divest from it?
Rebuilding this country with American hands by American workers.
Fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics. Lives are at risk.
We're not going to be the stupid people anymore, folks.
He's a climate science denier.
These are talented people, smart people.
The president-elect has continued to make deeply troubling choices.
I want people that made a fortune because now they're negotiating with you, okay?